Hey Louis.
Hey Samuel, how are you?
Yeah, doing well. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, doing good.
Good. Good. Right. So yeah, today we're talking about Ian Fleming.
Yes.
So yeah, we're gonna have a look at his life and his kind of history, and then talk about how that relates to his books.
So I don't
So
know too much about him, but Samuel's a bit more of an expert, so I think you'll kind of take the lead on this one a bit more.
cool. Nice. All right. Welcome back to the English
The
Boys.
show where we discuss all things literature.
I'm Samuel.
And I'm Louis, and thank you for tuning in.
Great. So yeah, Ian Fleming. He was born in London on the 28th of May, 1908, and he was the son of a Conservative MP, and he went to Eton during his teenage years, and he kind of came from a very wealthy background, and his grandfather had a investment company that did quite well. So yeah, the Fleming family were kind of full of money, I guess. Yeah, and then Ian Fleming, he left Eton, and he was quite a academic rebel. He wasn't very good at sitting at his desk and doing work, but he was very good on the sports field, particularly running. He won quite a few prizes for kind of athletics and things like that. So yeah. And then when he left Eton, he left a year early. He went to Sandhurst Royal Military Academy, which Louis and I have both been to. I used to live there, as my father was a chaplain there, and yeah, it's a very impressive place. But yeah, and then funny old thing, he kind of got pulled out of there by his mother for not being good enough. But he also contracted an STD from one of the local women, which was kind of frowned upon at the time. So yeah, and then he continued to further his studies in Geneva and Munich, and his mother was Swiss, hence his kind of move to Geneva there. But yeah.
Yeah, that's quite cool how he had that big shift to go to Sandhurst, and I suppose that's quite a big influence for the books as we'll talk about. Is that sort of
Yeah.
military, I suppose. And yeah, I think that's really interesting how he got how he pulled out of was it Eton, yeah. And the whole thing about him not really enjoying academics, but then he's sort of famed for having this academic prowess, I suppose, now. But yeah, I guess I suppose it wasn't really hinted at early on, I guess you could say.
Yes, yeah. And I guess we'll see this, but how money in this time kind of was the only reason why he was successful in terms of his family and inheritance. But yeah, it's an odd story, but yeah. Anyway, so after he left university, he applied to join the Foreign Office, and he was rejected from that application. So then his mother pulled out the monetary strings as such, and Ian got a job as a journalist in Moscow in 1931. Yeah, and interestingly, he covered some of Stalin's show trials, which were part of the purges. So yeah, that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Considering we're doing the USSR for our GCSE history.
I think we talked about this earlier before, but I really like how when you can take something like that and put it into perspective through something like a famous person, and I know that's kind of with the sort of more modern history that we're doing, that's a bit more prevalent. But yeah, to see Ian Fleming be part of a big thing like the show trials and the purges and things, it just adds another dimension to it, which I really like.
Yeah, that's right, and it kind of puts different parts of history into context. Yeah, it's quite cool. Yeah, and then he left Moscow, and he tried to become a stockbroker in 1935, and he failed pretty miserably at that. So he stopped. And then the Second World War came around, and in 1939, Fleming was recruited as Rear Admiral John Godfrey, the director of the Naval Intelligence's personal assistant. And this really was like the foundation for his military and kind of secret intelligence career. Yeah. And he was promoted to lieutenant and then lieutenant commander in the naval service. So yeah. And then in World War II, he spent a lot of time talking to Churchill's sort of staff, the SOE, which were spies that went behind enemy lines, and the Secret Intelligence Service. Yeah, so again, that's kind of where he drew his inspiration from for his books and gave him the foundation of knowledge and experience for that.
Yeah, and that's cool to see him like have that presence in the war, and then him being known as like an author and things. It's it's just like to hear about like his whole life and all the different things he's been up to. Really puts him into. Yeah, I've said this again, but like put him in perspective, and I think that's yeah, that's quite cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he wrote 12 books, and his first book, Casino Royale, was released in 1953, and he quickly became an international bestseller. And I guess at that time, these sort of books were kind of maybe a little unusual, and the way he portrayed James Bond was quite unique, and we'll get on to that a bit later. But yeah, and it partly gained wide popularity in the US because when asked about his favourite books, President JFK said that one of his favourite books was one of the James Bond novels. So yeah, that definitely gave it some oomph in terms of popularity.
Yeah, I think I suppose it might be similar back then, but for the more modern films and things, it's I think sort of like American audiences would see it as this quintessentially British thing, and it's quite like notorious to have this like gentleman spy now, and it's become slightly stereotypical, I suppose. I think they would sort of like it. Yeah, I suppose seeing this British character, and then that would open it up to see this this new world for American audiences.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't know how many of the movies you've watched, but the contrast in character is very, very different between the new films and the old films, but also very similar.
Yeah, I think I can picture what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So, talking about inspiration, Fleming used lots of names of school friends, teachers, and past girlfriends as characters in his books. And Fleming also based Bond's character off himself quite a lot. So he used the same cigars as Fleming, and he shared a love for golf and gambling, which Fleming kind of also had, and I think there was an interesting statistic about cigarettes as well.
Yeah, it was like 70 cigarettes a day and a bottle of gin he would have. Which is pretty outrageous, but
it is. It's pretty crazy. I mean, I couldn't imagine smoking 5. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, Fleming was in his early 60s, maybe 50s when he died. So I guess that would explain it.
I suppose that's contributed to it.
Yeah. And then going back to sort of why his books were so popular, it kind of gained traction because his character of James Bond was quite stylish. He was into women. He was into nice cars and clothing. And yeah, he had this sort of presence, this sort of masculinity that lots of people liked. And there are lots of things online that people kind of reminisce about that. Whether it was that accurate to the time or not, we will never really know in terms of experience. But yeah, and then there were lots of parallels with the Cold War as well, and that was kind of reinforced throughout the movies, as lots of the kind of the bad guys were often linked to the USSR.
Yeah, I was about to say.
And that links to kind of his experience in Moscow, potentially. Yeah.
Yeah, and even with like Stalin, as you're saying, in the show trials, you could get like a pretty good villain from that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So although his books were very popular, they gained quite a lot of criticism from professional critics and other novelists. They described Fleming's idea of Bond as kind of immoral, having quite a bit of snobbery in there, and a sense of false patriotism, which is quite interesting because you were saying that from a world perspective, and in the UK, but from a world perspective, the idea of James Bond is kind of quintessentially British, whereas people at the time are saying that that's not necessarily how British things should be represented or shown to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and I suppose at the time, especially like right at the beginning, having this sort of this character traveling around, being an agent, being quite like rebellious, with all the like the drinking and the women, and that's, I suppose, that could be slightly just like culturally different, maybe, I suppose, or just like something that wasn't really normalized as much then, and maybe it was it would be experienced as it's quite shocking and outrageous even. So and also going back to what you're saying about how critics just weren't generally quite well received to it, it's not particularly like literature, it's not like poetic and have like deeper meanings and things. It is quite adventurous, and I suppose you didn't really get that much. Sorry, I keep on saying it. I suppose you didn't really get that many like adventure things or spy novels like that originally back then, so it was quite different.
Yeah, I see that. I think, that definitely rings true, and I guess it was the matching of espionage and then sort of the Fleming's call them guilty pleasures that came with it, that, like you said, kind of made it seem immoral or whatever else. But yeah.
Do you think it put like a different sort of perspective on what war was like? Because if it was kind of because I don't know how much of the books are like primarily about war as such, but like the idea of Fleming writing it back then, how much do you think was, well, not as just like influence, but can be like given a perspective upon it?
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I think it definitely, I mean, the novels, the novels are, again, quite enthusiastic in terms of Bond's personality, but I think the thing as a whole, you don't really see much devastation or kind of reality of war.
Yeah.
And it's almost kind of they're having fun with it, which in essence is what Fleming was trying to do. But no, I think there's definitely room for saying that there's not much reality in there in terms of war, but cool. So after Fleming's death in 1954, there were quite a few novelists that actually carried on his work. and kind of furthered the stories. So they included Kingsley Amis, Sebastian Faulks, Charlie Higson, and Steve Cole. Also wrote the Young Bond series, which for both you and I think often appeared on many of Waterstone's bookshelf.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think about people continuing a writer's works? Because they had that with Lord of the Rings, with J.K. Tolkien's son. But yeah, what do you think?
I think it's really interesting. You see it quite a bit with like sort of films and stuff, I suppose, nowadays, with like IPs getting chucked around. But I think for something that's so what's the right word? So specific to like how that specific author intended it to be, and he like wrote it based off his own like experiences, and it was very personal to him, I suppose. And someone to take that could maybe be a bit dangerous, really, to see if you could tarnish what was already made. But I think with like Charlie Higson and the Young Bond things, I think what they could do is just like bring it to like a younger audience, which will like modernize it a bit and keep its legacy going. But I think it's interesting because, like I said, it can be dangerous, really. You don't want to like oversaturate something that's already good enough. But to bring it into like a modern day audience, or even like young children, I think would be quite impactful. Yeah,
that's a good point. I think that's definitely true. I mean, for the Bond novels, at least they weren't so the continued Bond novels after he died weren't that famous that it kind of tarnished the reputation of the Bond novels, the initial ones. But I think that's a good point in terms of continuing it for the younger generations or appealing to another audience. But so that's pretty much all of it there. My headphones are about to run out of battery, but so it's just a quick one tonight. But he just one more thing to note, which I thought was quite interesting in my research. Fleming, I mean, a lot of people might know this already. I didn't, which I thought was quite disappointing. But Fleming actually wrote Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in 1964.
Wow, that's quite different.
Which, I didn't know. Have you watched it or read it?
I must have watched it at some point. It's one of those sort of films you put on like when you go to like you go stay at like a family friend's house or something, if you know what I mean. But no, I don't think I don't really know that too much about it apart from like the car. But that's really different. That's really interesting how you have something so different. I guess you don't really take much World War influence to that, really.
I mean, it's literally completely the opposite. It's mad. It's so mad. You've got a German man running around a village at the bottom of a castle trying to catch children. It's brilliant. But I mean, not great, but I didn't even know it was a novel to start.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I thought it was just the film. Anyway, cool. So that's all for this week.
That's kind of it. Yeah.
We are up in Wales next week, aren't we? So are we going to try and interview someone up there?
Hopefully we'll get an interview, which should be fun.
Nice.
But it's been great to continue doing it in the midst of revision and stuff. So I think that's quite nice.
Yes. Yeah. Fab. All right.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you for listening, everyone. And if you'd like to donate to Great Ormond Street through us, please do.
Link in the show notes and stuff. Perfect. Thanks, guys.